Brilliance Audio.
Carnival Blues by Damien Boyd, performed by Simon Mattox. Succinylcholine. It had been the obvious choice, until he'd found his target in intensive care. What use is a drug that paralyzes the respiratory system if the intended victim is already on a ventilator? He leaned on his trolley while he waited for the lift outside the operating theatre and examined the clinical waste crate in front of him. The novelty of taking a peek and trying to guess what the surgeons had cut off or out had long since worn off. He'd got quite good at it, mind you. Amputated body parts and internal organs were easy. Tumours, a bit more of a struggle. 3 months working as a porter. Andreas Calder from Estonia. The agency hadn't asked too many questions, or looked at his papers too closely, and neither had the hospital. Nobody had recognised his accent wasn't exactly Estonian either. It was the perfect cover. He was earning his money this time, that was for sure. Still, it was being made worth his while, and he'd be back in the old country before the post-mortem took place, only a 3-hour flight. Would a hospital porter look out of place in the intensive care unit? Hardly, although he'd need to pick his time carefully, and the drug. "No one must suspect the thing," Zevan had said. "It must look like natural causes." Easier said than done. It had never mattered before. A bullet in the back of the head and over the side of the boat in the middle of the Bristol Channel, suitably weighted down. Sometimes he didn't even bother with the bullet. All he'd had to worry about was not getting stopped with his victim in the boot of his car. This time was different, though, which explained the bigger paycheck, enough to retire on. Somewhere by the sea, on a cliff top, overlooking the Adriatic. He stood at the back of the lift, hoping the doors would close before anyone else appeared. It really was a shame. Sucks would have been perfect. Readily available in the hospital, the only real risk was getting caught in the act. Even the victim being in the ICU had its advantages. The cannula in the back of his hand was one, the feeding tube another. It gave him options, and there'd be no injection site for a pathologist to find. "Going down," he said, jabbing the button and glaring at the porter pushing an empty bed along the corridor towards the open doors. "I send it back up." "Thanks, mate." Sucks would have been hard to detect, too. That's if the police had suspected foul play. An ordinary toxicology screen would never pick it up. A pathologist would have to be looking for it. And then all they'd find was traces of succinic acid. Hardly surprising, that. It had been a problem, finding a poison that would kill quickly and then disappear. But now he had the answer. Potassium chloride. Cause of death would be cardiac arrest, not unusual for a man on life support for 11 months. And once it had done its job, all that would be left would be potassium and chloride, both substances a pathologist would expect to find. He might even go as far as injecting a lower dose a few days before the fatal one, just so raised potassium levels were noted in routine blood tests. He was known for being thorough. Zevan had given him a name, but not much else, and he knew not to ask too many questions. That was the way of things. 11 months on a life support machine, though. It had come as an unpleasant surprise that his victim was a fellow Albanian. Still, ours is not to reason why, as the English are so fond of saying.